Biswas has had a smashing debut late last year with You Beneath Your Skin, a literary crime thriller that follows lives of Anjali Morgan, a single mother to an autistic son with several problems of her own, and Jatin Bhatt, a senior IPS officer who Anjali is having an affair with, caught in a web of corruption, poverty, drugs, and murder. Both find their lives going upside down. You Beneath Your Skin is set in the cold and dark winters of the capital, where murdered women are being found stuffed in bags with their bodies disfigured with acid. Damyanti's book lays bare the true underbelly of Delhi and its dark, disturbing side. The book has got some rave reviews from almost all top publications in India and some of the best crime writers in the world. Readers have been highly appreciative of her writing style and seem to have connected deeply with the characters when you read reviews of her book online. Let's get her to share her secrets to writing these memorable characters. Hi Damyanti, welcome and thank you for making time for this.
Hi Lipika, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You Beneath Your Skin has severely flawed characters, and to me, it was the reality of these flaws that made them so relatable. How many of them were real people that you met?
So really none of the characters are completely real. They're not based on people other than probably Sakhi, who's the youngest character in the book. All of them are snippets of me, bits and pieces of me, bits and pieces of people I have met, and sometimes once the characters start going, they become real. They take on a life of their own, and they go. I kind of let them do their thing. So the characters are not really taken from life, but like there's no such person that this character is based on this person other than Sakhi, who was the daughter of one of the migrant workers where I used to volunteer with Project Y. So she is the only real character in the book.
I've also seen a lot of readers totally besotted with the character of Sakhi. Why do you think readers are liking characters that, I mean, is it because a lot of wrong has happened to them, or is it because they find something? What is the general feedback that you get?
So I think truth resonates. At some point, everybody feels like they have met these people. They seem very real. Someone like Jatin, someone like Anjali, like Maya or Pawan. You would have met some version of these people in your life because they are not cardboard. They are not fixed. They change through the course of the novel, and you are given an experience through their viewpoint. So what they see, you see. What they feel, you feel. What they like, you like. What they don't like, you don't like. And sometimes that experience is uncomfortable but also exciting because you're inside the head of a person you are not. My job is to give you that experience. If you're a reader, my job is to make you feel those feelings and face those challenges, go down, into these problems, also triumph over them. So I think one of the things that readers kind of resonated with is how much they came to care about the character, either liking them or disliking them, but they're not indifferent to what happens to them. So each chapter kind of ends with a question: what's going to happen to this character next? So we don't know what's going to happen, and since it's a literary crime, it's more of a why done it than it's a who done it. So it's more important that people focus on the characters. Once they get very engaged with the characters, then they want to know what happened to them. And if you remember all the books you've read, you would not remember the plots of all these books. So what happens and what happens next. But you would remember Sherlock Holmes from, Arthur Conan Doyle. So you would remember Tom Sawyer. So these characters is what kind of, at least for me, makes the novel. It makes or breaks a novel. So I think readers kind of respond to that. They respond to the experience of being inside the skin of these characters.
And how do you go about the Namkaran Sanskar for these characters? How do you choose names? How do you decide that, okay, this one is going to be Anjali Morgan and this one is going to be Maya? How do you do that?
It's a very subconscious process. So Anjali came to me as Anjali, and she has stayed Anjali over the 8 years it's taken me to write the novel. In the very first story writing exercise, I remember she came to me as Anjali, and then later there are. If you read the novel, there are puns on her name which I cannot give away because of the spoilers. So you realize why she's named the way she is after you read the book. Jatin Bhatt very comically turned out to be a real person I had no memory of, because I was a student of NIFT, and after my friends from NIFT read the book, they were like, Jatin Bhatt, wasn't he the head of the department? Wasn't he head of NIFT at the time? And I was thinking, oh yeah, and like Jatin in the novel, he had a mustache, he was a tall and had leader-like qualities, so very no nonsense. But I didn't know him at all, and my subconscious somehow held on to that name, and he became Jatin Bhatt, and he's this police officer. I hope the real Jatin Bhatt never reads this book, because Jatin is not a white character, has shades of gray, as anybody who reads even the blurb of the book would know. So for me, the names are always organic. I think Sakhi is the one which I borrowed from real life. She's a real person, and I wanted her to be there. She is exactly who she is. Maya kind of came in because Maya has a sense of duality to her. So she is on the one hand, she's very confident, she's professional, she's a detective, she's a woman strong in a man's world. But on the other hand, she's hiding things on her skin, and she is kind of wearing these clothes which hides her body. So I kind of like those resonances. So actually what happened was, once the names once the characters came into their own, I realized that the names meant something, but they are a product of my subconscious. I take no credit for them.
Do the characters drive the story, or is it the other way around for you? I mean, do you first think of characters and then sketch a story, and then they have to fall in a certain way, in a certain frame, or is it the other way around? Like, you allow them to take the story forward?
For me, it is always the characters. The characters always drive the story. That's where they come from. In fact, all my stories come from characters, in the sense I would sit down, there would be a voice or a sensory detail that I start writing about, and then I start asking questions. Who is this character? What is their setting like? Where are they? Who are they related to? What is their goal? What do they want in life? What is their secret? What are the things that they are inside of them? What are the needs that they have? That sometimes, are they looking for affection? Are they looking for validation? Things like that. So it always comes from there. The characters started, and once I know what the characters are like, who these people are, then I start asking questions. What if something happens to them? So something that they are very close to, or someone that they are very close to, there is some change in that, and then the characters kind of take on a life of their own, because the conflict comes into the picture. And none of the characters are perfect. They are flawed, they are layered, just like we all are. None of us are saints, and none of us are villains. We all are a mixture of everything. So I kind of work in layers. I kind of keep digging and digging and digging, and figuring out who these people are. So sometimes the entire first draft of a novel is just figuring out the people, and only in the end do I know, oh, this is the central conflict, this is what the character really wanted, and this is why they did this. So then I know, oh my god, I have to come and fix it in the beginning. So the entire story kind of flows only from the characters, and they are the people I'm most honest to when I'm writing.
You work with Stop Acid Attacks and Project Y, two NGOs. Stop Acid Attacks is working with acid attack survivors, and Project Y works with children from the economically weaker sections. And I have also read that you've done a lot of work with them, you volunteer with them, but also a lot of research has come from there. Tell us something about that.
Project Y came into my life about 10, 12 years ago when I read about them in a newspaper in Singapore, because Anuradha Bakshi, their founder, had been given some award. And then I went to India, started volunteering with them, and I kind of fell in love with the place because of the sort of work that they do in these small underprivileged communities where they work for the children's education. And a lot of the settings in the novel kind of come from Project Y, the alleyways of Okhla, of Govindpuri, all these places, under the flyover, the pipe in which Sakhi lives, Sakhi's so-called home, is a real home which I visited, and that all those scenes in the book, they are very much real to what life is like. Stop acid attacks, I think met them in 2014 or 15 when I wanted to research more on acid attacks, because I wanted to understand what it feels like to go through this entire tragedy and trauma. And there's no way to, I don't even know whether I've imagined it, right? Because I've never been through it, and that sort of trauma, we don't know. I still don't know whether I've written it, whatever I've written, whether I've written it right. But a lot of the conversations I had with these extremely brave girls, like Ritu Saini, like Neetu, all of them told me their stories, and I kind of took them down and then kind of went into the characters that I was writing about. So Project Y and Stop Acid Attacks both kind of figure very deeply into the novel.
Is that why you have decided to have all the proceeds from all your books go to NGOs that you are associated with? Is that the reason?
Well, a lot of the stories and the setting and bits and pieces of the characters in the book come from Project Y and Stop Acid Attack. So You Beneath Your Skin kind of owes its existence to these non-profits. And I think it's only fair that everything from the book goes to them, because in some cases I cannot even imagine the pain, the trauma that, for example, the acid attack survivors have gone through. So I cannot really appropriate their stories, and I feel it's only right that everything goes to them. Absolutely, 100%.
Almost all your reviews, both from the media and from readers, have highlighted this fact that the characters have stayed with them. What would you suggest young writers or people who are writing their first novel to do when they are sketching their characters?
So first of all, I'm very wary about giving advice and setting anything in stone, because part of the writing business is finding our own processes and figuring out what works for us. So even out of the things that I say right now, pick up what works for you, and what doesn't work for you, just leave it by the wayside. So I can only share what works for me. For me, I start with the interviews of characters, just like you and me are chatting with each other. So I put the character on a chair and I ask them questions, but these are not always ordinary, normal questions. I ask very intrusive questions because I need to know more about them. So I would ask questions like, what was your dream last night? Or what are you carrying in your purse? Or what is your secret? What's the one thing you don't want to tell anyone? What are you very angry about? What makes you sad? What is your happiest childhood memory? What is your saddest childhood memory? Who are your parents? Do you love your parents? If yes, why? If you don't, why not? So I start getting really, poking my nose into their business. So I really start asking them these questions. And the idea is to find out what are the wounds inside of them, because each of us is defined, our world view is defined by the sort of experiences that we go through. Those become the things that shape us. So as a child, the experience that I have or you have, that kind of teaches us how things are going to be. So each of us has these inner pictures. So the whole idea is to try and figure out what is the inner landscape of this character. So by asking these questions, I am digging deep into what has shaped this individual. So I try and go back to the moments in their childhood when, for example, they went in believing something, they came out believing something else. So they went in believing that, oh, for example, for a villain, oh, women are nice people, my mother is nice. And then they come out of that scene and they no longer think women are nice people. They think women should be punished. So these are the things and that shapes that person. He probably becomes a killer of women. So what happens to people, what would have happened to Anjali for her to become the person she is? Why is she such a perfectionist? Why is Jatin so ambitious? Why is Maya such a combination of extreme confidence and extreme diffidence? So I go back to those childhood scenes. So when they were 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, as they were learning to become people, because each of us become people based on our experiences, and that becomes our reality. Those are the pictures that guide us. That becomes our neural network. So I need to find the neural network of these characters. What is it that is making them run? And once that becomes real, once that becomes organic, then the character conflicts are real. Then we know what does the character want and why can't they have it. They cannot have it probably because of XYZ reason. There's an antagonist, there's a storm, there's a problem, something or the other. But if we know how that character is going to deal with that problem, because we know that character, then we found our story already.
Fascinating. Okay, let's come to some fun part of this conversation. I will ask you some questions and you have to try and give me some quick answers. Who is the biggest critic that you have of your work?
You're looking at her, me, myself. I'm my harshest critic, and there are other people who would tell me it's not so bad, but I say, oh my God, it's terrible. I really don't like any of my writing. 99% of my writing I don't like.
And what about your parents and husband? They're all appreciative of whatever you do, or they do give their inputs at times?
My husband is a huge support. He's the support system because whom I can write, and he's the one who says, please go ahead and write. But he doesn't have many opinions on my writing. He feels very happy that I do follow my interest, and he's fully supportive of it. But he's not involved in reading everything and giving opinions. My parents haven't read my work. They haven't read much of it, but they're very supportive in terms of the fact that, oh, I'm writing and it's a good thing, I have a book. But they are elderly, they have their own interests, and my book hasn't figured there. No.
Who have you taken after? Your dad or your mom?
So I think, like all people, we take bits and pieces from our parents. From my dad, I got the love of reading. I was introduced to books when I was, I think, 2 or 3 years old, and I was given this Amar Chitra Katha called Sukhu and Dukhu, and I could kind of read it off by heart in my head because I was not able to read characters at that time, but the story had been read out to me. And that's where I think my love of reading started. So that I completely owe to my father. He has like thousands and thousands of books. From my mother, I think her belief system, because she's always taught me, even when she was, when I was very young, and even now she says the same thing. You always need to see good in people. You always need to see good in this world. Do not try to see what is wrong with other people. If you want to see flaws, if you want to find flaws you find within yourself. In other people, always find things to praise. So I suppose that has become internalized, and I find a lot of flaws with myself. But I have come to this, sort of happy notion that everybody is nice, and sometimes I put within bracket until proven otherwise. But to me, I would generally like to think that everybody is nice and they will be nice and kind to me. And very fortunately, I think about 99% of the case, that's the truth. That's what's happened to me. People have generally been kind to me.
And who's into gardening more? Because I know you are into gardening yourself.
So gardening I got from my father, because he is a huge fan of gardening. He's devastated that his plants are dying right now because of the lockdown. They had to move away. I like gardening because it's kind of soothing. It's nice to kind of watch things grow. It's nice to touch the leaves, and my husband laughs at me, but I sometimes talk to them. And it's a moment you spend with, for me, people would say that this is like a, hocus pocus. But for me, I sense, for example, an intelligence, a calming presence. They're almost like friends. So I have a very real relationship with plants.
You were an NIFT pass out, and by profession, you would have been a designer. Why did you never take that path?
So I was 18 or 19 when I had this thing about fashion. That I was, I think, kind of invaded by the kind of glamour that fashion has. And I'm talking about the time when professions were kind of limited to, you could be a teacher, you could be a doctor, you could be an engineer, and maybe an IAS, but nothing else. So for me, this was different, and I thought, oh my God, you do such lovely clothes. And I got into NIFT, which in those days there used to be just one NIFT, so there was a lot of struggle. But after I kind of got into the profession, I realized that it's very surreal, because I am dealing with an embroidery worker who has a very hand to mouth existence, who's getting paid like 100 rupees or 200 rupees in those days. And then I'm getting a dress made, which I'm selling to a client, whether inside India or outside of India. It could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases. So the dichotomy is huge, and it's very hard to deal with. And also, there are children involved sometimes. I mean, 13, 14, 15 years old, they are doing the embroidery, because the finer hands, they have smaller hands, they're more nimble, so the embroidery is finer. So I kind of began to struggle with this a little, and I moved towards writing more, because I kind of have a degree in English. My husband encouraged me. He said, "You can write, why don't you?" etc., etc. And I kind of have left fashion far, far behind right now.
And what's with this thing about your karas, the concoctions that I've myself tried quite a few of them that you suggested me. Tell us about it. What's about this fascination with naturopathy? I find it very interesting, because very few people these days depend on Karka ilaj. I'm sure it works for you, and it worked for me. I mean, both the times that you suggested it. Tell me about that.
So, firstly, because I've tried them and I know they work, so I would not recommend anything I've not tried and I've not prepared myself. So that's how the confidence that I can kind of recommend them. But I think very early in life, I saw my grandmother making them, my mother making them, like for small things like common cold or fever or whatever, tummy ache, and you hurt yourself, you have some turmeric and milk and all of those things that people laugh at these days. But they tend to work, in my opinion, simply because allopathy is more for if you have a serious disease, you need an operation, you need a bone set, you need all those things. Allopathy is very good for that. They have all that system figured out. But for chronic pain or for smaller problems, and maybe to just keep your body healthy, your immune system long term healthy, it is like what you put into your body. What you eat is who you are. So some of the things that you eat, if they're nutritious, they are pure, they are good for you. And the kara follows the same principle. So you do have your your ginger, your turmeric, and they work according to certain principles. And I've read a lot of non-fiction in which I realize, for example, the role of Ayurvedas in diet. And I realize how the Western medicine kind of works on diagnosis from a very different angle, and it's kind of money oriented in some cases, because at the end of the day, medicines means profit, because it's a profit driven industry. So I kind of take it very easy with Western medicines. I would not say that if I broke my arm, I would not go to a hospital, but if I, catch a common cold, I would rather try some of my karas, which I have been, recommending to you as well.
And one last question. You were on an extensive book tour last year. In fact, beginning of this year, up to beginning of this year too, across India, and you were invited to quite a few festivals, literary festivals. Tell us some fun facts about those festivals that you visited.
The literary festivals, I would never have gone if I did not have like this wonderful team encouraging me to go. It's all, the support and advice I got, because I'm an introvert. I don't do very well with lots of people. So I was a little intimidated, to be honest, but what was really surprising, and it was a very pleasant surprise, is that I discovered that You Beneath Your Skin resonates with the youth of India. I never thought that this was a book with its, the serious issues. You have, acid attacks, you have murders, you have police corruption, you have police violence, you have all kinds of, you have autism. So these are not the kind of issues that I would associate with, my prejudice. Now I know it was a prejudice where I would think that they would only think of Instagram and, Bollywood heroines, and that's it, and that's all they're concerned. But it's not true. And I had a lot of conversations with really young people, 17, 18, 19 years old, who had discussions on feminism and, what should I do? They would come out with funny things like, I like your hair, your hairstyle. I have long hair. Can I chop my hair? And I would go all serious on them, saying, whose body is it, whose hair is it, why, why are you even thinking of this? Is, think about those things, that who has a right to your body, who has a right to decide what happens. So I had some very enriching conversations. So yes, I'm not as terrified of book tours anymore, and thank you, Lipika, for sending me on some, and I will follow your advice.
And when do we get to see you next?
The next time when we meet is when I come out of my writing cave, which I think I am deep within right now. I don't know whether this will be a book. It's a work in progress right now. So if it ever becomes a book, and if it ever decides to kind of emerge, then I'll emerge along with it. And of course, the first person I'll turn to for guidance and advice is you. So right now, I'm not sure. Let's hope this becomes a book.
Wonderful. We would be looking forward to that one. Thank you so much, Damyanti, for joining me here today. It was good fun talking to you after a long gap, and I do hope and pray that whatever next you're writing is going to be as wonderful and as intense and as successful as your first one. In fact, more. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Lipika, for having me. It was a huge pleasure talking to you, and I really need your wishes right now. So thank you. Let's hope this book happens, and really can't wait to hug you very soon after all of this is over. It would be a real pleasure to come and see you.
That's so kind. Thank you. That was Damyanti Biswas for you, the author of You Beneath Your Skin, that was published by Simon&Schuster, September 2019. And if you want to know more about your writers, get some tips on how to write, how to create these memorable characters, how to weave stories that fascinate your readers, or you're just interested in knowing what your writers do outside of their world of writing, do subscribe to our channel and like this video and leave a comment and let us know who all would you want to be on our show. Until the next time, keep smiling and keep reading. Bye-bye.